Today, I would love to share with you how I have been raising chickens in my backyard. I have 3 hens, and this week I collected 20 eggs from my 3 hens. And I have just really had a lot of fun, and I want to share with you some of the things that I have done. I'm no expert by any means, but I certainly can share with you my experience. So I'll go over with you how I selected my breeds of chickens, and then my coop and my bedding. I'll show that to you. Now, if you are a regular subscriber, I already did a video on my coop, and so you may want to skip over that section. And then I'll show you what I feed my chickens and how often, and then I'll show you what a dust bath is, and then we'll take a look at the eggs. And I also have done a lot of research, so I will be citing different studies throughout the video, and I will leave links below the video in the event that you also want to read the little studies that I found. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, first of all, you probably live in a completely different area than me, and so I will show you things about my land where I keep my chickens. Maybe you have a nice wooded lot. I have a wide open area without a lot of trees. Also, my climate is very cool. We have pretty cold winters with snow. We don't get below 0 degrees Fahrenheit, and usually in the summer, a really hot summer for us is around 95 degrees Fahrenheit. So also my predators where I live, we have a lot of hawks or predatory birds. We have raccoons and cats like bobcats. So I encourage you to just take these things into consideration, that a lot of times when I'm showing you something I'm doing, it may not apply to where you live, okay? So one of the first questions I think everyone has, if they're not familiar with keeping chickens, is do you need to have a rooster to get eggs? And the answer is you do not need to have a rooster so that you can have eggs. And that brings me to another recommendation. I picked up several books to help me along raising chickens, because I certainly had no experience doing this. We bought some little chicks way back in probably about 10 or 11 years ago, and I had to give them away because we moved. So I really never got my first egg from them, but I do have some reference material, and this is always good. I have a health book so I can figure out if there's something wrong with the chickens, and just, general things you may have questions. I recommend that you get a book, watch a lot of videos, but also have some books on hand. So one thing that is very important before you go out and you buy yourself some little chicks is make sure that you can have chickens where you live. A lot of urban areas don't allow chickens. So you'll want to call your local government or your homeowners association if you live in that type of neighborhood to make sure that you can have chickens. Most likely, if you live in a city, there's going to be some type of restrictions, like maybe you cannot have roosters because they disturb the neighbors when they crow every morning, or you might have to keep it a certain distance from the property line. Maybe there's a restriction on how many chickens you can actually have. So just get that cleared up first before you go and get yourself chickens and a coop and all of that. So make sure you can have chickens. So before you purchase your coop, you might want to go ahead and select your breed of chicken first so that you get the right sized coop. There are so many different types of chickens that you can purchase. Now, I am strictly talking about egg-laying hens here and not a dual-purpose chicken. Some people raise chickens for meat birds, and some raise them for just eggs, and some buy what are called dual purpose chickens, which they're pretty meaty, but they lay well as also. So just keep that in mind. And chickens come in all different sizes. The very small chickens are called bantams, and they generally weigh between 2.5 to 3 pounds, and they lay small eggs, but that's fine. You can have more of those in a small coop. I have small hens which lay a lot of eggs, and they weigh between 4 and 5 pounds. And then some hens can weigh between 7 and 8 pounds. So you can see how this would affect the size of your coop. So I'll give you some links to where you can go to look at some very easy charts to determine what breed of chicken you would like to raise. So keep in mind when you are looking for coops and it says holds 4 to 5 chickens, that could be a little tiny bantam, okay, and it may only hold 2 full size 7 to 8 pound chickens, okay. That is really what it boils down to, is you have to select the right size chicken. So the chart that I am leaving a link for you below the video will tell you breeds of many different popular chickens, and it will also rate their egg laying from poor to excellent. It will tell you the egg color, and it'll tell you if that breed is cold hardy, which is very important for those of you who live in the cold northern climates. It does not tell you the weight. What you'll need to do is, if you see that a hen there meets your requirements for its egg laying and the egg color that you want and whether or not it's cold hardy, you can click on that breed and it will give you a lot more information, such as the weight. So take all of those things into consideration, and then once you have selected your breeds of the different, maybe you want to get different types of chickens, then you can start to think about your coop. So before I move on with the video and show you my coop, I'll go ahead and introduce you to my 3 hens. So my first one here, her name is Dolly, and she is a cream leg bar. She lays the most beautiful blue eggs. They're kind of small. They're on the small size, but she lays about 5, actually about 6 a week right now. So she's a real good layer, and she just has a really sweet little personality. And then over here is Sally. She's an Easter egger, and she lays blue-green eggs. She is an egg-laying machine, let me tell you. She's the top of the pecking order, and one time I thought I was going out of my mind because I actually collected 2 eggs from her in one day, and I couldn't be absolutely sure, but now I can absolutely confirm it because I only have 3 chickens, and so when I get 4 eggs, I know one of them has laid twice in one day because I collect eggs twice a day. And so today I was doing the voiceover for this video, and I went out to the nesting box, and there she had laid 2 eggs at the same time because I had just collected eggs before her, and I got 2, and then when I went back to the nesting box, she was just coming out of the nesting box and there were 2 more eggs in there. So I know she laid those 2. They're the exact same color. So there you go. That's one of the nice things about having a small flock, is that you are very familiar with the hens and the eggs that they're laying. I've always read that it takes a chicken 20, I think, to 23 or 24 hours to make an egg, but apparently if they're making 1 egg, they can also be in the process of making 2 eggs at the same time because they were laid at the same time. And then over here is Daisy, and she's another Easter egger. Her eggs are a little bit more on the darker green side. So we'll go over eggs here in just a minute, but there are my chickens. And now we'll go ahead and I'll show you my chicken tractor. So all 3 of my small chickens fit very comfortably in this small coop, and then this run, that's the cage part, is called a run. That is actually about 6 by 6, and the coop, believe it or not, is only 2 by 2, 2 feet by 2 feet. And so you might think that's kind of small, but they really don't need a whole lot of room in their coop. This is where they sleep and stay safe, and they a lot of times just all cuddle up together anyway. And then the back of my coop here, that's where I have my nesting boxes, and we'll take a look at all that here in just a minute. In my chicken coop, I have windows that allow ventilation. In the winter, I can put this little piece of plexiglass in my windows so that I can keep my chickens nice and warm and free from drafts. I put a little rubber mat inside the coop for easy cleanup. A lot of times people will put little pieces of linoleum inside your coop. You also need what's called a roost, and that's where your chickens will sleep. They like to jump up on something and then they lay on their feet, and that keeps their feet nice and warm. And so all 3 of my chickens fit on this roost here that I made. A lot of times your coop should have a roost inside it built in, and I plan to do that for my coop here at some point in the future. And so on my run here, I have what's called an access door where I can open it up in order to let my chickens in and out of the coop. And I also have an access door on the side of the coop where I use that to clean. And then in the back, I have this little window here to allow for ventilation. Ventilation is very important for chickens. They do not like to get hot, and you don't want a lot of buildup of smells in the coop because there's a lot of times, there's a lot of poop in the coop, so you want to make sure you have ventilation for them. And then back here are my nesting boxes, which has a latch on it. It's like a safety latch. It's real hard to open. Now inside here I have nesting boxes. I line my nesting boxes with cardboard, and then what I put in there are just some clean old rags, and that's nice and soft for them to lay their eggs. I like to shop at a grocery store called Aldi, and so whenever I go there, I pick up some little boxes. They're always out in the aisle. They're perfect to line the nesting boxes inside my coop. They have the little cutouts in the front, and it keeps my nesting boxes nice and clean. So sometimes I have a little leak or rain might get in there. I have that nesting box. I can throw it away and put another one in there. I have a window on the other side, so I have a lot of ventilation and light that is allowed into the coop. I like to make sure that I have a door that closes and latches shut, because we have a lot of predators in our area. So every night I go out to the coop, I latch the nesting box closed, and sometimes I'll even drape a little sheet or something over it if we're expecting kind of a chilly night, and then I close the coop door and I latch it shut so nothing can get in there, because I put a little camera on it to see. I was interested in knowing if there was anything trying to get inside my coop at night. So I had my motion detector on my camera, and it was set to record for 2 minutes. And so it caught this raccoon, and he was just trying everything he could to get in there. I have no idea how long he was out there trying to get inside, because I only had 2 minutes of footage. But there you go. I mean, they will get in there. They want the eggs and they want the chickens. Of course, we have neighborhood cats as well. And so it's really important when you select a coop to make sure that it is predator proof. I have heard that foxes can just go right underneath a lot of those runs and get up in the coop. We also have a lot of hawks around, different types of predatory birds. So that's one reason I leave them in this run. I don't let them just go out into the yard and walk around. If I had a lot of chickens, I probably would let them do that, because losing one, if I had a flock of 30, probably wouldn't make much of a difference. But when you only have 3 chickens, I have to be really careful. So now every morning, right when the sun comes up, I have to go out to the coop and let them out. And I also give them a cup of food then, and make sure that they have water. If you live in a cold climate, your water might be frozen. So we'll go over food and water here in just a minute. Now I chose to get what's called a chicken tractor, and that simply means that the coop is on wheels and I can move it around my yard. And so my wheels on this coop really are too small. It's very hard to move my coop around. So make sure if you're going to get a tractor too that your wheels are bigger than mine. And so I move it every day because they are full size now, and they really need that new area every day. When they were smaller, I only moved them about every 3 days. And whenever I move them, I like to make sure that I have some washable shoes on, because you don't want to track any of that into your house after you've worked around where the chickens have been. So when I move the tractor, it looks a lot like this. It's been scratched up. There's not much grass left there. They don't really eat a lot of the grass, but they eat a lot of the other stuff, and they like to scratch so they can get down into the soil and look for bugs. So I just take a thatch rake. I think I got this off of Amazon or Walmart, somewhere like that, and it does a really good job of just pulling up all of that loosened up thatch. And then I go back over it, and I've been seeding my lawn now with some tall fescue grass and also clover. We have some clover in the yard, and the chickens love it, so they don't really prefer grass too much. I'm putting grass out just to make the yard look better, but I'm putting out clover for them, and I'll just spread out a little bit of hay on top. And over here you can see that is where I have seeded the grass, where it's real green. So that's kind of how I've been doing the tractor. I picked up some clover seed and tall fescue seed right there at the feed store. They put it in a paper bag for me, and it was very easy to find. So one thing I want to stress is chickens poop a lot. They poop a lot more than you would think. And what does poop attract? flies, so you will notice there will be a lot of flies around your chicken coop. So I suggest, if you don't have a chicken tractor that you're going to be able to move around your yard, if you have a stationary coop, put it as far away from the house that you can, still comfortably check on your chickens where it's not a big chore. And also with any kind of guidelines that the government has told you, like it has to be 100 feet from the property line. Just try to keep it far from your house so all of those flies don't go inside your house. You don't want that. Because like I said, you don't see as many flies in the winter, of course, but when the summer comes around, you're going to notice a big pickup in the population of your flies. So one thing I learned early on when I put my chickens in their coop and in the run was they did not like the sun. It was pretty hot, I think it was in August, and so I bought a little tarp on Amazon. It has little grommets on the corners. I made sure that the tarp I got had grommets so that I could attach it to the run. I picked up just some little clips at Harbor Freight, and so that's been working fine for me. They like it much better when they have some shade, especially in the summer. Now, in the winter, it's an entirely different story. The tarp comes in very handy then, too, because we do get quite a bit of snow. And so for warmth, I mentioned that a lot of times when they sleep on their roost, they are all cuddled up together, and that keeps them plenty warm. I also drape a sleeping bag over the coop, and my coop is so small that one sleeping bag really does a great job of keeping out any drafts. So one time we had a lot of rain. There were floods everywhere around us, and our little pond was overflowing, and the position of the tractor was kind of scary, actually. They were way down there close to that pond. I just knew they would get flooded out. Fortunately, they were fine, but now I know if there's a lot of rain in the forecast, I need to make sure I have my tractor positioned at higher ground. So I learned my lesson on that one. And on a pretty day, I like to just roll up the tarp a little bit, roll up the sleeping bag, and they can get some sunshine and a little bit of a breeze. They do enjoy their little coop. So now it's time for the fun part, and that is getting your chicks. You should have already selected your breed at this point and also have your coop, okay? Because once you get your chicks, you're going to be distracted with them, and you're probably not going to have time to go and get a coop or make a coop. So make sure you have that ready to go. Also, if you are set on a certain breed, there may be a wait if you're ordering it online from a hatchery. So when you select your breed, just go ahead and look around and see if that's an easy one to get or not. You can also find chicks at a lot of feed stores during the season, the spring season. They have a lot of little chicks in there. And some local breeders also is another source for chickens. A lot of times your local breeders will sell pullets, which is just a young hen, and they may be 7 or 8 weeks old, and that'll give you a jump start on having chickens. You don't have to raise them from chicks, because it can be a little bit of work, to raise a little baby chick that's 1 day old versus an 8-week-old feathered out chicken that you can go ahead and put in your coop. Okay, so determine, do you want to go through buying chicks and having to buy all the supplies and what's called a brooder and all these things I'm going to show you, or do you want to just go straight to a young female pullet? Okay, so if you decide to raise chicks, you'll need what's called chick grit and then chick starter crumbles. And that's just a little feed for the little bitty baby chicks, okay? And what I like to use for what's called a brooder, I repurposed my dog's little pen that we take when we travel. And it collapses. I got it on Amazon. And it's like a vinyl or polyester material, so I was able to just rinse it off when I was done with the chickens and left it outside so that the UV light would sterilize everything, and it was nice and clean. It was easy to fold back up and put away. So this is how I had my setup. I used my little pen, and then inside the pen I put a large bucket with a stake going through it for a little roost, and I put some bedding in there, and then of course the chicks, and then the light. They need warmth. That's probably one of the most important things about your chicks, is they need some warmth. Our dog was a little concerned about what was going on, and we let him check them out and everything. That was kind of fun. He was very interested in the little chicks. So just check on your little chicken handbooks that hopefully you have purchased, one or two, and it'll tell you how to get those chicks started. I just put a little bedding down in the bucket, and of course we have the little roost there, and you want to have heat for them. That's one of the most important things. Put the heat kind of off to the side so that if they get hot, too hot, they can leave out from underneath the heat lamp, and if they're too cold, then they can get under the heat lamp. So you'll want to have the temperature when they're very young between 95 and 99 degrees Fahrenheit, and you can just use a little like laser thermometer and test the temperature. And then ideally you want to have that temperature drop by about 5 degrees each week, and you can do this by just raising the light about 3 inches, and that will cool down the temperature. So just raise your light about 3 inches every week, and it will drop that temperature by about 5 degrees. And do that until the temperature is about the same as your room. And here is how the setup kind of looks. This was in the morning. They were still sleeping. I have just a little dish of water there along with some of the chick crumbles, and I put a little bit of the chick grit in there with it. And then of course they like to sleep right there on the little stake. This is where I had 3 of the Easter eggers, and later on I got my cream leg bars. And I ended up selling 2 of my chickens, so I only had a flock of 3. One thing I started noticing about my little chicks early on was whenever I would change out their bedding, which was at the time I was using pine shavings, when they had fresh bedding, they just seemed to bite and like they were itching really bad. So I thought there might be mites in the bedding. So from that point on, I started to add what's called diatomaceous earth to the bedding, and what that does is it kills soft-bodied insects. It's just a crushed shell. It's not a chemical or anything, and it worked great. So I always add a little bit of that to the bedding, and I use it for a lot of things really with chickens, and it's very, very helpful. So make sure you have some diatomaceous earth. I'll refer to it as DE in the rest of the video, just so you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so after they were about 7 to 8 weeks old, I went ahead and I moved them into their coop, and they had their little roost there. They really kind of enjoyed their little coop, I think. They enjoyed it so much they didn't want to leave it. At night, it was getting a little bit cool because this was in the fall. I think it was in September. I did put the little heat lamp out there just to kind of keep them warm so they wouldn't get too cold. So now it was time to finally get them out into the grass so they could act like chickens. So I had to kind of lure them out. I think I may have even actually picked them up and put them on the grass. So this was kind of their first time out. So about another week or 2 later, I picked up 2 cream leg bars, and my thought on this was they were still small enough where they could all get into the coop, but I would sell 2 of them to a neighbor, and that's what I did. I just kept 3 for my little flock. So in the coop, I am still using pine shavings for my bedding, and that's just something that will help collect, the poop and keep the smell down. It absorbs a lot of moisture, and I'm still treating it with DE. DE, you can get it on Amazon, or a lot of feed stores also sell DE. For bedding, people do recommend pine shavings. I've heard some people swear by using sand, and I've also used straw because I already had some because I'm using it in my yard, but it does tend to mat up and clump up a lot. So with this small coop, I find it's very easy to clean, and so with one of the access doors, It's level there. It doesn't have a ledge on it. I can just scrape out the shavings, and I'm actually making a compost pile with just pine shavings because they don't break down as fast as like regular wood chips would or something like that. For what reason, I don't know. But I am making just one compost pile just for pine shavings. I plan to keep that a little more moist than my other compost pile, and that should help it break down quicker. So before we move on to food and water, I would like to ask you to subscribe to the channel, and when you do, click that bell off to the right of the subscribe button, and you will have the choice of selecting what kind of notifications you would like. I would suggest that you click on all. That way you'll receive all of my notifications, such as things that I have posted to my community tab. It kind of gives you behind the scenes shots and information about what I'm working on. And then you will also receive all of my videos. I have a unusual channel in that I try to incorporate my garden with my kitchen, so I show you how everything comes together. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at food and water. Now, a chicken is much different than us humans. When they eat food, it goes into a little place called a crop, and that's not been digested or anything, and then it passes down to their gizzard, and when it's passing down, it's does receive some enzymes to help break it down, but actually in the gizzard is where it is ground up. So that's quite a bit different from us humans, right? We chew and grind our food first, and it goes into our stomach. So the gizzard is a very important part of the digestive system for the chicken. And the gizzard is where they have what's called grit, and that's kind of like teeth to us. So that's what grinds down their food. They need to have grit on a regular basis so that everything can pass through their digestive system. So just make sure that you are offering some type of oyster shell or granite grit is what it's called. You can get these at the feed store. I've heard that some people don't give grit if their chickens are free ranging because a lot of times they're eating sand off of the ground. But I insist, I think it's very important that you have some kind of grit offered to your chickens at all times. And they'll know when they need it. And this is what it looks like. I just put it in a little cup there, and they'll come over and get it. Instinctively, they know that they need grit, okay? Also, what they'll need are what are called scratch grains, and this is just something that I toss into the run right there on the ground when they can scratch and peck. It encourages them to scratch and peck, and that's all chickens want to do all day long. Scratch and peck, that's all they have to do. So giving this a little treat like this will keep them busy. They need to be exercising. If they get too fat or overweight, they can become what's called egg bound, and that egg is stuck in them and it won't come out, and then they can die, or you have to do something to try to treat it. And again, you can refer to some of your books if that ever happens. I haven't had that problem, but you want to keep them busy. Okay, so give them a little bit of scratch maybe in the mornings, that way they can be working on that throughout the day. Now, the main thing that they will eat is called layer feed, and you'll notice that when you go to buy your layer feed that it will come in either a pellet form or crumbles. I first bought my chickens pellets when I started feeding them layer feed, and it'll have on the bag when you can start feeding them layer feed. And they didn't really like the pellets, so I'm still working on that bag, and then for the next round I will be feeding them crumbles. Now, I am also giving them a little bit of extra things that they seem to enjoy, and I mix this in with their regular feed. It seems to be working out real well. I have things like peanuts, oats, raisins, sunflower seeds, just different things like that, and that's what I feed them. I feed them a little more in the winter because they need that in order to stay warm. They don't need as much in the summer because also they're eating more bugs in the summer. So my layer pellets look kind of like this, and since they weren't really eating this very well, I decided to grind it up. So you can put it in a bag and crush it, or just run it through a blender if your chickens don't like pellets either. And to that I added some peanuts, and I also crushed those up pretty good. And then I also like to add a little bit of grit in with their food. And then some oats. They love the oats. You can put steel cut oats or rolled oats in there. That's fine. And I'll add a little bit of wheat berries. And then a few raisins. And then I have some dried oregano from the garden, and I'll crush that really good so it's almost like a powder. Dried oregano is wonderful for your chickens. It is so good for them. So try to grow oregano. It's really easy to grow. I have an entire video on how to grow oregano, and it also in there it'll tell you why it's good for your chickens. And then one other thing I like to add to the feed is DE. Now, of course, you can just feed your chickens layer feed and let them graze. That's no big deal. But since I have just a small flock, I like to give them, little treats. I like to make sure they're spoiled rotten, I guess. But at any rate, one of the other things that I put in their feed is called DE, which we already went over, diatomaceous earth, and this will help keep them wormed. Chickens eat a lot of bugs, and bugs are intermittent hosts for worms. Okay, they want to make it to the chicken. That's where they'll thrive, but temporarily they're living on these little bugs that the chickens are eating. I did read in one of my chicken handbooks that not to use DE, that it didn't make a difference, and maybe that book was written before this study was done. I'm not sure, but there was a really good study at the University of British Columbia where they fed hens with some DE, and then they compared it to the diet of some hens which were not fed DE. And the hens that were fed DE showed a much lower fecal egg count than the ones that were not fed DE. And then also those that were fed DE laid more eggs, and they were larger eggs. But I'll leave that link down below for those of you who want to check it out. I think they were fed, I think it was about 2% of their feed. The DE was about 2% of their feed. So I just like to add a little bit of that right there to their feed to keep them from getting worms. I think you can tell if your chicken has worms if the eggs are real dirty when they lay them. So you don't want to have dirty eggs. But we'll look at eggs here in just a little bit. Now, sometimes I'll also give them mealworms. These are dried mealworms. They're a little bit expensive, so I'm not really buying much of those anymore. I just kind of stick to the things I can pick up at the grocery store. So I like to feed them a cup of my little specialty feed, 1 cup in the morning and 1 cup in the afternoon. I also give them 1 cup of scratch throughout the day. And my chickens love fresh greens from the garden. I'm always feeding them things like spinach or kale, turnip greens, and of course when they're eating all these leafy greens, they're high in lutein, which is very good for your eyes. And so there was a study also done on lutein-rich eggs, and it was found that the lutein was more bioavailable in a study on men versus taking supplements for lutein. So that was real interesting, and again, I'll leave a link below the video if you want to check out that study. Now, I'll also grow little baby kale in a little GreenStalk system here. That way they had fresh greens all winter long. So when I feed them their leafy greens, they like to peck and tear the leaf. And so I found it was easy to feed them, for instance, this Napa cabbage. I would just put a little skewer through it, through the big rib there, and then that way they can just peck away on it. And they really enjoy Napa cabbage. I guess it must be real sweet to them. I make sure they get something fresh and green every day. And then I had like maybe some old broccoli in my refrigerator. I wasn't able to cook it in time. And so they love that. They just peck away on it. They eat all the little sweet buds right off the end of it. And you may have heard the term pecking order before. This is an example of pecking order. You'll notice that the 2 little Easter eggers go straight for the broccoli, and they don't let the cream leg bar eat right now. She knows she's at the bottom of the pecking order. That is a real thing, and oddly enough, the pecking order has changed since I've had my chickens. The little dark brown and black one, she's the head of the pecking order, so she determines who gets to eat. The second in the pecking order was the cream leg bar for a long time, but it recently changed, and now she's at the bottom of the pecking order, and the little tan one is the second in line. So it's kind of interesting. If you watch them enough, you'll you'll be able to pick up on the pecking order. And here's an example of the black and brown hen. She's pushing the cream leg bar out of the way. She kind of will get on top of her and nudge her, and it's kind of an aggressive motion, and so you know that she's the top of the pecking order. So the other thing that I feed them every day, and I make sure to do this because it has a good little amount of protein in it, especially in the winter when they're not eating bugs, I will give them 2 thin deli slices of oven roasted turkey, and they absolutely go crazy for this. Oh my gosh, it is so funny to watch them when I'm feeding them their turkey. They will fight over it, and so you know they love this. And I've heard too that it's really important that they get some kind of little protein snack when they're laying eggs, and they will lay more for you. So just make sure they're getting some kind of protein every day in addition to their layer feed. So this is them getting their little turkey. They look forward to that so much. And now for water. You want to make sure you have fresh, clean water available for them at all times. This is so important because remember that food is going into their crop first, and it has to move down into their gizzard before they can actually digest it. Some chickens, their crops will get clogged up, and it can be very dangerous for a chicken if their crop gets clogged up. So make sure they always have water available. Make sure their dish is always clean. I have to clean mine once a week. And I just use the little cage bowls. Those work fine for me. I just have this small flock. Sometimes your water will freeze, and you might want to get a waterer that has a heater on it for those of you who live in the colder northern climates. You'll notice over here to the right, I did try this little waterer out for a while. I just found that the little cage bowls work best for me. So there are certainly a lot of different waterers out there. Just the main thing to remember is to make sure you're keeping your water clean, and then make sure it's off of the ground so that they don't perch on it. They'll jump up and sit on it. Then, of course, they poop in the water if they do that. So this one that you see on the ground here, really, I should have a hanger for it, and I really didn't want to mess with it and getting a hanger and all of that. So I just use the little cups, and it works out fine. You know, just for 3 chickens, it's perfect. You can also take an food grade bucket, and you can buy little what they call nipples for the buckets, and you would drill holes for those and secure them and teach your chickens to drink from it. I bought these, but I've really never put them together, of course, as you can see. I might use it at some point, but right now they like to just drink from the bowls. I picked up one little waterer also from the pet store, but they have not learned to drink from that. So my basic everyday schedule goes something like this. I'll get up when the sun's rising around 7 a.m. and I will go and move the tractor to a new location, and I give them 1 cup of feed in their dish. That's the feed that I made, and so I don't like to throw it on the ground because, well, there's a lot of little special things in there for them, so I want to make sure I put that in a little dish for them. And then I put 1 cup of scratch on the ground, and I check their water and make sure it's clean, and then I start checking for eggs anywhere from about 11 o'clock to about 2 in the afternoon because they kind of stagger their laying. And I've gone down there before, and there were 2 chickens laying at the same time, 1 in each nesting box, but I really try not to bother them while they're laying their eggs because if they see me coming, they want to come see me because they think I have treats. So I just kind of try not to bother them in the morning when they're laying their eggs. Of course, this morning I only had 2 eggs when I checked around 11, and then I went down there later, and the little Sally, the little black one, was in her nesting box laying 2 more eggs. So I kind of startled her. She ran out, and that's how I know she was the one laying those 2 eggs. So around 4 o'clock is when I'll feed them again, and I'll pick some greens from the garden or from my little vertical garden, what's called the GreenStalk, and then I will also check on their water, make sure they have water at all times. And around 6, I might even give them some more food. But usually they're okay at that time. That's definitely, though, when they get their little 2 slices of turkey, which they love. And at this time, I also, depending on the location in the yard, I might just move them a little bit more to give them something fresh to kind of scratch around on, because they've usually torn up that area that they're in by that time. So there you go. That's my daily routine. Now let's talk about a dust bath. This is kind of a funny thing. It's something that chickens do instinctively to get clean. And what they do is they roll around in dirt, oddly enough. It's not in water. They don't take a bath in water. To them, this is their little hot tub. A lot of people believe that they take these little dust baths to cut down on mites that get up underneath their wings. That's where a lot of parasites will find themselves on a bird, and so this helps them get rid of mites. And they just love it. There's something about rolling around in their dust bath that they just love. One time I saw all 3 of them in here. It was so funny. So I found a tub that was big enough fit into the little door here. I had just a small access door, so I had to make sure my tub would fit through there, or else they probably would have one that's bigger. So here's what I put in their dust bath. I just collect some dirt from my yard, and then I put some DE in there. That will help kill off any mites. And I also put some place sand in there, and I keep this little bucket right there on the side so that I can always top off the dust bath here and there. So just a little dirt. I try to sift through it and get out any large rocks or roots or that kind of thing. I'll add some sand and then a little bit of the DE and mix that up really good. And when they see me doing this, they are trying to get out of that run, and they want to come over and get right in it. And that is so funny to me. They know exactly what that's for, and they just love it. And I had a subscriber recommend that I use a kitty litter scooper to kind of sift through the dust bath every once in a while to keep it clean, because sometimes they can poop in there. So I use that to get out large rocks, or just even when I'm just cleaning out the dust bath on a regular basis. Okay, I've got to get another bucket here soon, because this one has cracked on me, and I've been trying to repair it with duct tape. And here's a picture of another one, the little leg bar. She's in there just rolling around, and she makes the funniest sound when she is taking her dust bath. It sounds like a cross between a cat purring and a cricket chirping. It's so funny. So after you've been doing all of this for about 5 to 6 months, you should finally be able to go out and collect your first egg. And it is so exciting, let me tell you. So on January 25th, that was my first egg, and it looked like it came from the cream leg bar. So as I mentioned, I collect my eggs around noon, and they use both nest boxes. I know some people say that they only use one nest box, but mine have always used both of them. And your eggs should always be nice and clean, okay? If not, you may have a problem with worms. And so I started to weigh my eggs just so I could kind of see how big they were and if they were going to get bigger. And do expect that you will have some small to medium-sized eggs when they first start laying, and that should change. Now, my Easter eggers lay bigger eggs than my cream leg bar, but my cream leg bar, she is just a little egg machine. She lays so many eggs, and I think I'm getting pretty good production out of all of them, really. So it's the weight of the egg that determines the size. And so here on the right, where you see average weight, on the left, that is the weight for a dozen eggs. And so that's how you would categorize it as far as its size, from peewee all the way to jumbo. So when they first started laying, I recorded how many eggs I collected each day on a calendar. And so here is just a quick chart to show you what I collected over the past 8 weeks. And right now, this past week, I have collected more eggs than I ever have. 20 eggs this past week, and that's because of the little Sally laying those 2 eggs. So I am just really impressed. And now I understand that their egg production will slow down at some point. At some point, they will start what's called molting their feathers, and I think they stop laying when they do that. That's when they start to lose some of their feathers. And also, my understanding is as they age, their production slows down. I can't really report on any of that yet because my chickens, of course, are very young. So anyway, what I am doing right now is I'm preparing to get another small flock. So I have a tractor on order, and I'll have another small tractor just like I have now, and I'm going to get 3 or 4 more chickens, and that will be later this year. So I hope to have some maybe this summer, about 3 or 4 more little chicks, so they will start laying, you know, at the end of this year, when the production of these other ones might be slowing down. I'm not sure because they're little egg machines right now. So anyway, do subscribe to my channel, and I'll give you an update when I start to get my next flock, and maybe I can show you if this first flock, if their egg production is slowing down. So when I first started collecting eggs, I kind of struggled with how I should store them. So I'll just share with you how I do it. I found this nice little spiral egg rack that you put on your counter. I found it on Amazon. And how it works is you just put your freshly collected eggs on the top, and then whenever you need to use an egg, you just pull it from the bottom and the other ones roll down. I haven't had an egg break on me yet, so I just do it very gently. And I don't wash my eggs first. All of my eggs get used within the week, so I don't really have to worry about how to store them for a longer period. You really can store your eggs for about 2 weeks on your counter at room temperature without doing anything to them. Now, I wash them right before I use them. So I get my water temperature going. I need to make sure it's hot. It cannot be cold water that you stick your eggs under, because if there is some kind of bacteria on the outside of your egg, because that shell is porous, cold water will force the bacteria into the egg. Hot water will not. So it has to be 20 degrees warmer than the temperature of the egg. So make sure you've got warm water when you wash your egg. Okay? And of course, I probably don't have to tell you how you can use them. Eggs are used in everything, and the yolk is so dark, so rich. It's just wonderful. And now for the shells, I'll wash those out under that hot water I've already warmed up on the sink. And then I'll let those shells dry out real well. I will save a lot of them in a little plastic bag, and then I grind them down in my little blender here, and just enough to make them crushed up pretty good, and then into my composter they go. Okay, that's a great little additive for your composter, but you really need to grind them up first before adding them to your compost. And here's an example where I cracked my egg, and to the right is my egg. You can see how crystal clear the white is and how deep and rich the yolk is. And on the left, that is a store-bought egg. And that's because my eggs are just very rich with lutein, how they're always eating these fresh leafy greens. It just makes their yolk so nice and dark. So I hope this video will help you start raising your own chickens in your backyard. I hope that you were able to learn something. If you did, feel free to share this video on your favorite social media platform. I sure would appreciate it. I'm not on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, all of that. Hopefully one day I will be. So thank you so much for watching, and y'all have a beautiful day.